I know you feel... Sorry.
Is this the OP?
No, I was just... the iCarly song came to mind when we did this.
iCarly? Dragon. Hello, welcome back to Aetheral Space. 5.10.
Yeah.
We're back. Holy shit.
Now that we've made $1 billion after monetizing and exploiting Cactus, we don't need to make videos anymore, but we're doing so anyway, for fun.
Yeah, because we like the viewers. So, like, you kind of owe us now. So keep it coming, guys.
Jesus Christ.
I'm joking, of course.
Kind of. Obviously, yeah. Welcome back to Aetheral Space, everyone's favorite web serial. Today,
You say this with
Aetheral
sarcasm,
Space,
but many people have said they like Aetheral Space.
I'm not being sarcastic. I like Aetheral Space.
Oh, I'm just
I wish I knew
paranoid.
what was going on in Aetheral Space, but I like it. How many pages is this chapter? Only 6. Alright, so this won't take too long. Do you mind if we split this one?
Yeah, sure.
Alright. Excuse me.
Okay.
Wait, fuck, what happened last time?
Well, they began the Great Escape. They were attacked by Akamanto, the Spectre, as it is described here. And,
Yeah, path of red, path of blue.
Originally
They were gonna,
attacked
exploit
Dragon.
him.
And then it switched to Ruth after she counterattacked.
Yeah, so they're gonna try and, exploit it. And then Dragon was like, Ruth, pick blue! And she was like, red! And Dragon's like, no! No! Oh wait, that was recapped already. I didn't even need to re-say that. The Spectre floated over the gap between buildings, watching Ruth cautiously as it awaited its answer. The thing gave her the creeps. Ruth, Dragon whispered, trust me. Pick blue. Ruth glanced over at him for a moment. No doubt Dragon had some kind of plan to cheat their way to victory. But when it came to fighting, Ruth Blaine knew how to win like a fish knew how to swim. She sighed and opened her mouth. Red, she said. The creature adjusted its grip on the throwing knives ever so slightly. You have chosen the path of red, it said. So be it. Jesus. The first time the thing had attacked, Ruth hadn't been able to intercept it. But now that she had an idea of its speed, she could just move earlier to compensate for it. She lowered her body to the ground, claws crossed in front of her face, as if she was expecting her enemy to rush at her. There was a glint of moonlight reflecting off a moving knife. There! Noblesse set. In the same second, the Noblesse set manifested around her body and was instantly destroyed with a sound like shattering glass, accompanied by a scream of pain from her enemy. It had been outplayed. Play of the game. The handles of 5 throwing knives, still sparking with Ruth's aether, protruded from the Spectre's body, scattered around its torso, crimson blood pouring down from its wounds into the chasm below. This thing obviously would prefer to stay at range, so she gave it the chance to do so. It would execute whatever these paths were at a distance. The funny thing, though, was that any projectiles it threw were probably slower than it itself. So what? I feel like I've asked this before, but how the fuck does the Noblesse set regenerate after she breaks it every time?
So, it's described as
a real
breaking.
thing she's captured?
It's described as breaking. That's just sort of visual sense. What it's actually doing is it gets damage. If it reaches a certain damage level, it sort of goes back into her aether and returns to its original form until it comes back.
Okay. So it's kind of like the Thousand Knives a little bit from Scissor 7. I gotcha.
I've not seen that, but I
Funny
think maybe.
thing, it's like a sword where it's made of 1,000 pieces, so it breaks up into pieces, but then it reconstitutes itself.
Kind of, yeah.
The funny thing, though, was that any projectiles it threw were probably slower than it itself. Slow enough for her to counter, at least. Ruth ran forward with aether-flared legs as the Spectre writhed in midair, reaching over to pull one of the throwing knives out of its shoulder. As if she'd let it do that. She zoomered past Dragon and leapt through the air, colliding with the Spectre and seizing hold of it with all her strength. The throwing knives made excellent handholds. The Spectre swiped with its free hand, trying to cut through Ruth with the curved blade, but Ruth simply flipped over onto its back instead, ripping one of the throwing knives out and taking it with her. Then she threw it straight at Dragon. He just dies. I assume she wants him to do his, thing, but what if she just killed him? Ruth! The Cogitant's eyes widened in horror for a moment as the knife zoomed towards him, but at the last second, just as Ruth had expected, it vanished in a spark of blue aether. His surprised expression twisted into a cocky grin. Better move your head, Ruth, Dragon said. Gemini shotgun! There was a flash of blue light, and in the same moment, the throwing knife reappeared, slamming into the Spectre's stomach with frightening speed, steam rising gently from the blade. Instantly, the head of the Spectre snapped to turn to Dragon, and its labored voice echoed out. 2 paths lie before you, it rasped. A path of blue and a path of... Ruth had reached over, still clinging to the creature's back, and pulled another knife out of its shoulder, interrupting its little monologue. Then, just as she had the first time, she hurled the knife towards Dragon, who absorbed it into his Gemini shotgun. The dance began. It was a repetitive but bloody three-person waltz. Oh god, he doesn't even get to do his move! they soft-locked him. It was a repetitive but bloody three-person waltz, the Spectre spinning as its attention switched between two targets, Ruth tossing blades to Dragon, and Dragon firing those blades right back at the Spectre. The 5 throwing knives were passed back and forth, zooming through the night air like blue dashes of light, each impact accompanied by a wet crack and a splash of blood. 2 paths lie before you, a path of blue and a... Ruth pulled the knife free. The enemy's eyes snapped to look at her. 2 paths lie before you, a path of... Dragon fired the knife back. The enemy's eyes snapped to look at him. 2 paths lie before... Ruth pulled the knife free. The enemy's eyes snapped to look at her. 2 paths... Dragon fired the knife... Wow, this is riveting reading. The knife back. The enemy's eyes snapped to look at him. Just like a robot. Meanwhile, Garth, he's got like stab wounds appearing all over his body. Ruth grinned to herself as the dance went on. They could do this. They could win. They were winning. Just like a poorly programmed video game character, the Spectre was only able to focus on a single target at once. Before it could act on that attention, though, the other person was free to launch an attack, redirecting its attention towards them, and on until the enemy was defeated. So as long as they kept this pace up, eventually the creature would be too damaged to even move, and then they could finish it off. Ruth went to grab the knife once more. Enough! But her hand met only empty space. The Spectre was suddenly gone, replaced by crackling sparkles of red and blue aether, and she was falling. She plummeted into the gap between 2 buildings, the last thing she saw before falling out of sight being Dragon's surprised, horrified face. It was a long way down to the ground, but not nearly long enough. Dragon blinked uncomprehendingly at the space the Spectre had just been occupied. The red and blue sparks of aether remaining soon vanished too, leaving nothing but empty air. Ruth had fallen out of sight. From the timing, there was no doubt it had been intentional. That it had been an unorthodox attack on the part of the Spectre, but an attack all the same, intended to deal with Ruth and avoid Dragon at the same time. But that didn't make sense. The fight they'd had with the Spectre so far had been like clockwork. It responded in specific ways to specific stimuli, and didn't divert from those behaviors. Had that been intentional on its part? Had it acted predictable in order to bait them into acting predictable, opening them up to an easy counterattack? It was possible, very possible. If it was true, though, that implied the Spectre had intelligence. Yes, whispered a hollow voice in Dragon's ear. It seems you were just a step too slow. Dragon went to spin around, but just as the Spectre had said, he was far too slow. Before he could even finish the turn, a sudden burning pain erupted on the back of his shoulder, and a scream escaped his throat. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. The Spectre had thrust one of its remaining knives into his shoulder blade, and was slowly turning it in place even as he looked. His body tried to fall to its knees, but the Spectre held him up with just the handle of the knife, which only intensified his agony. The creature tutted as Dragon screamed. You chose the path of blue, it said. Strangulation with unkind, unclean hands. Rejoice, kin of the blind man. Your redemption is at hand. And with that, it finally turned him around, wrapping the fingers of its free hand around his throat and lifting him into the air. It was over. It was over. It was over. The pain in his shoulder was excruciating. The chaos it created in his mind, scattering any attempt at mustering his aether. He could feel the bandaged fingers leisurely squeezing tighter and tighter around his throat, tighter and tighter, tighter and tighter, and before long he knew there would be a hollow crunch. Feral, hateful eyes inches from his own familial hands around his throat. If only you'd never existed, his mother hissed. If only you'd never been born! That was it. They'd lost. His life had ended. Dragon's eyes fluttered closed, only to open again when a flash of radiant light burst up from the gap between the buildings. Popcorn!
No problem. 25. Ruth Blaine fell, the ground inexorably drawing closer as she flailed in the air, limbs buffeted by wind pressure. There you go, Skipper said. Proof there's more to you than you think. He was admiring Ruth's handiwork, what she spent the last few weeks painstakingly creating. The suit of seamless white armour standing upright in the middle of the flight deck. The noblesse set. 26. Ruth wasn't as pleased, though. She looked down at the ground shamefully, arms crossed. It's weak, she hissed. Oh, absolutely, Skipper laughed, poking noblesse set with his index finger and listening to the audible cracking. One good punch and this thing would shatter like glass. 27. So it's trash, Ruth grumbled. Waste of time. Told you it was a bad idea from the start. Bad idea? Skipper turned back to Ruth, frowning as if the notion was obviously absurd. Trash? How do you mean? You said it yourself, it's 28. Fragile, yeah, it takes about 30 seconds to regenerate, but that's the beauty of it too. All the force that hits the thing goes right back to the thing that hits it. There's not a person in the world that's getting a second punch in. 29. The ground was so very close now, welcoming her. The blessed set can be destroyed, sure, Skipper grinned. But it can't ever be defeated. 30.
Oh, she's about to fucking terminal velocity use it to launch back up, isn't she?
3 things happened in a single second. First, the noblesse set reappeared around Ruth's body, the light playing off its surface making it look like some kind of crystalline monster. Second, Ruth hit the ground. The sound of shattering glass rang out as the noblesse set encasing her body broke apart, white light flooding from the cracks. Third, the rebound. All the force...
Wait, didn't she do a similar move too back in...
yeah, when she was fighting Simeon, she did that to launch herself up to it.
Yeah.
All the force generated by Ruth's long forward impact against the ground was reflected, sending her flying right back up in a shower of bright white light. A springboard board of retaliation. As Ruth flew up, her
You
eyes
think
were...
if she kept doing that, she could eventually reach terminal velocity? Because she goes higher every time, so she buys more time for it.
Eventually she would run out of Aether.
Ah, damn.
And a second later they were covered up by the metal mask of her skeletal set. Steel claws protruding from her hands and feet, strips of iron encased her torso like an extra ribcage, and her hair flowed backwards, glowing like an inferno. The noblesse set, something she created rather than destroyed, was proof there's more to her than a petty killer. But the skeletal set was proof that part of her was very, very good at being a petty killer. The Spectre's grip...
That's what you're missing.
That's right. No. Something that created rather than destroyed. That was right. That's right, actually. No, it was right the first time. I second my guess myself.
Yeah.
There was no mistake from the beginning. The Spectre's grip relaxed slightly, surprised from the bright light probably, and in that moment Dragon retaliated. He slammed his aether-infused foot into the Spectre's stomach, forcing it to let go as the air was pushed out of its lungs. Then he jumped backwards, putting as much distance as he could between himself and the enemy. That still wouldn't be enough. Dragon was painfully aware of that. This thing was nightmare fast. Disengaging from the fight simply wasn't practical. It was kill or be killed. On the other side of the roof, Ruth landed on one knee, sparks of red aether orbiting around her. Her gaze snapped up to regard the Spectre, her eyes narrowing. Behind the Spectre, Dragon plucked one of the falling throwing knives from the ground and held it forward, his own eyes fixed on where the Spectre's jugular would logically be. He is weak, he knew that, so his only hope was to win in a weak way. There was
I can't wait for the reveal where he's like Death 13 and there's nothing in the cloak. Like, lolly-ho!
I see, the Spectre chuckled. The final round, Things proceeded naturally from there.
That was actually a really hype chapter, I'm not gonna lie.
Thank you.
I literally was imagining, you can call me cringe, but have you ever heard the song, like, Satellite by Rise Against?
I've not, no.
There's a really cool AMV for Gurren Lagann. I was just kind of, like, thinking of that, like, the whole sequence when she was, like, believing in herself that she's more than a killer, that she can create, and the whole thing with Skipper. I was imagining that, and then, like, right when it kicks in was when she shot back up. I'll have to show you the song later. It's so good.
Thank you.
Alright, well, good ass chapter, Tanhony. I'm gonna go show him that song now and show him what I
Do we have any other thoughts on the events of the chapter?
I mean, it was a very good chapter, don't get me wrong, but like in the span of the plot, not much really happened, so there's not much to have thoughts on. I do really like the little bit of lore that, like, we're getting... I feel like what we've gotten a lot of recently is a lot of Ruth's past, a lot of Ruth's personality, and this is really good because she's one of my favorite characters and I just want her to be happy. But I'm very curious when we're going to hear more about Dragon and Mr. Fix, when we're going to get more about Skipper.
Yeah.
Even Bruno and Serena, there's been like glints of the Yaku, but I feel like Ruth has really been developed here. And I feel like this should continue probably for the rest of this arc, but then I'd really like to see another character get to shine, like for a hot minute. But I feel like what's being built up for Ruth has added so much to her character since the days of Get Me a Cheeseburger, that it's honestly spectacular.
You did get a little bit of Dragon this chapter.
We got a crumb of like his mom wished he was never born. We got an Atsushi flashback.
Well, it's more than that. It's more like attempted murder.
Yeah, his mom tried to kill him. Does anyone love Dragon? I mean, I can't blame them for not, because he's a little bit of a shit, but is he a little... Here's my question. Is he a little shit because no one loved him? Or did no one love him because he was a little shit?
We will find out.
Which came first? That's what I'm curious about. I wonder if there was, like... I wonder, because even in his, like, adolescence, he was, like, really angry at Mr. Fix, right? I wonder how far back you have to go before Dragon, like, smiled. and wasn't a piece of shit. He's like 3 years old, laughing, giggling. It's like, happiness. By the way, how do babies work with cogitants? Because you know how, like, the whole thing with humans is, like, it takes longer for babies to, like, be able to function because they're building up all that brain time. Do cogitants, like, age slower? Like, for example, you know, a toddler can, like, walk at 2. Do they have trouble, like, speaking till later in life and whatnot?
So it's less that a cogitant is smarter, per se. It's like, imagine, like, a normal person has, like, 100 brain points they can put into a task at a time.
Right, he has more brain points, but because of that, his brain's more developed, so it takes a longer time and more nutrients to grow, right?
Right.
So, do they develop slower, is what I'm asking. Like,
I would probably say so, though, yeah.
Like, say the average kid learns to read at 5.
So earlier on,
to read at, like, 7.
Yeah. Maybe not that.
If they scale better in the late game.
Yeah,
right.
So early childhood, I would say, but later childhood, it sort of syncs up and starts to accelerate.
Yeah, exponential growth. Exponential returns.
Stonks, as they say.
I wonder if that's actually how you can find your kid was, like, a cogitant, was, like, if they had trouble in school. I wonder if there's, like, a diagnosis, like, congratulations, it's a cogitant.
And his eyes glow blue.
Yeah.
Well, Allegiant's got the glowing eyes, so it's just normal like, blue.
You know what'd be fucked up? What if you thought you were a cogitant, because, like, but you were just a skirrent with glowing blue eyes quirk?
It's like one of the Gene Tyrants couldn't afford cogitants, so they like made their bootleg version.
Yeah, he was running low on God points in that game you showed me, and he was like, shit. I mean,
well, this is good enough. He's pretty smart.
That would suck, because it's like how my whole life people always asked if I owned Culver's. People would always be like, "Are you a cogitant?" And he'd be like, "No, you can't copy my homework. I'm just as smart as the other kids." Alright, so we should probably end the episode now.
Yeah, but I enjoy Super Mario. Thank you for watching, everyone.
Yep. Bye!